Isn't it great to have these three with us here tonight? You think about the great celebration. Again, we're going decade by decade, but the 60s was such an important time for Cardinal baseball. And these three guys have been connected to the organization for all of those years, all the great memories. And, of course, they don't need introductions. John's already mentioned who they are. You know who they are. But I want to start with the voice of the Cardinals, Mike Shannon. And, Mike, when we think about the 60s, what was so special about that time for you?
We had Gibson. Plain and simple. We knew when we went into the World Series, we only had to win one game because Rob, he'd win the other three, okay? And I'm serious when I talk. I went from the outfield to play third base, and so after a year, I went to Bob. I said, is there anything you want me to do over there? He said, I don't care what the hell you do over there. He said, except that when there's a guy on first base and less than 2 outs, be ready. The next 6 or 8 guys hit me one hopper somewhere. I said, this guy must know what he's doing over there. And I watched him, too. He just turned the ball over and let it sink in, and the right-handed batters, boom, they'd hit a one-hopper to me.
Yeah, he was testing you. 3 World Series, 64, 67, 68. Mike, your first World Series, you hit a home run in each one of them. 64, you were just 24 years old at that time, and you had a home run against Whitey Ford and the Yankees in the World Series. What when you think back at that moment, what comes to mind?
Well, it was a bomb, too.
Was it?
I mean, a bomb.
I had a friend named Lefty Loncarrick, okay? And he played in the Yankee organization, okay? So he was a bricklayer. And he bet his whole week's salary on the first game because of the Yankees. And I hit the home run off of Whitey Ford. He said, you're not that damn good. He held it. I said, Lefty, what do you want me to do? He hung a curveball. But it was a big thrill because, my first World Series, my hometown, and I stopped on the way home from the ballpark, and that's when we had 2 papers here. And the Morning Globe would put out an early paper and had big block letters about Shannon's home run and so forth. So it ended there after game 1, though.
Well, a great moment. I mentioned you were just 24 years old. Tim, you were only 22 at the time, and here you are on the greatest stage.
Before we get off, Mike, I said it was a bomb. There were 4 guys, as I remember, that hit the scoreboard, hit the eagle. When the scoreboard in left field at Grant and Dodier, we moved out of that ballpark in 1966 on May 12th. But in that ballpark, there were 4 guys who hit the bird to start the bird flapping. Gus Bell, Joff Long, and I forget the 4th, but Mike Shannon during the World Series was the other one. Not too shabby. I mean, this was a monumental blast.
Tell you a funny story about that, though. It broke the U and the Budweiser sign, okay? And a guy named John Kern, it was one of the first neon signs that they ever had. So we went on the road and played the 3 games in Yankee Stadium. We come back, and this guy's behind the dugout. He's in Gussie Bush's box, and so he said, Mr. Shannon. So I had to turn around because it was Gussie's box. I said, yeah, what can I do for you? He said, I want to show you this invoice. The invoice was $4,916 for the he said, I wanted to show it to you before I showed it to Gussie Bush. And I said, oh my God, that was my whole World Series check is down the drain.
About a half a share.
It was worth it. 22 years old, you're catching Bob Gibson, you're in the World Series. We all know the catcher, and the Cardinals have great tradition, Tim, of terrific catchers. But that's a leadership position. How did you handle that at such an early age?
Are you implying that I led Bob Gibson during the 1960s?
How about the other guys? How about the other guys?
Bob, you'll have to explain that.
But that's tough for a catcher to do that.
Well, let me tell you, I checked with the Elias Sports Bureau about 2 hours before the function tonight. There have been, through 2018, there have been 19,000 Major League Baseball players, guys who have suited it up. And 349 of those have played in 3 World Series for the same team. 2%. And all 3 of us up here are part of that 2%.
How about that? That's terrific.
I
That's
love
outstanding.
That. That's a new one on
Well,
me.
and not just not just a small part of it. Tim, you hit over 400 in that first World Series, and again, the Cardinals won 2 out of 3, 429. But who's
got
counting?
it written down?
I know you do it, 429. And of course, Mike with the home runs. But Bob, 7-2 in 9 World Series starts, 81 innings pitched in 9 starts. Do the math. What was it about the World Series that brought out the best in Bob Gibson?
Well, I don't know if the World Series brought out the best in me as much as, back in those days, we didn't have interleague and all of that stuff. And when we got to the World Series, it was the first time the team of the American League got a chance to see us. We never played against them all year. So I think one of the reasons why I was more effective is because they didn't see me. And they get these scouting reports, and I can remember one scouting report that I saw in advance, and it was in '68. And I saw where they had me throwing 98% fastballs and with relatively no breaking ball whatsoever. And I decided I was going to throw more sliders because I had sliders was pretty good. And
I'll say.
And I threw a lot of sliders, and they were swinging at fastballs and not quite seeing what was going on there.
Well, we're going to talk to Bob a little bit more later on, so we've got some more things for you, particularly about 1968. But just kind of to close this out, I'm going to go back to you, Mike, about that team personality, Alberto's, the 60s, the winning Red Shandies. Was that a fun clubhouse to you? Was it and you can chime in too, was it a tense clubhouse? Was it a fun clubhouse? Was it serious? How would you describe those guys?
Well, when we would go out, there would be maybe 8 or 9 guys, and the same guys would go out to eat or whatever we were doing. and then
I got to tell you right now, I wasn't with them.
No, we had to go and clean it up after Bob. Anyway, and then I think Halberstam wrote the book about '64, and what he was trying to do is get into the civil rights part of it. Okay, but we didn't have anybody. I didn't know what color what we were even talking about, and but you would find us in Woodachek or Brock, or Bob Gibson or Tim McCarver. It just didn't matter. And we were, at that time, I don't know if we were that naive or we just didn't pay any attention to all of that, but we were together all the time.
Tim?
I would like to say, and this is a very festive night for Bob, because you can't talk about the 60s without talking about Bob Gibson. I would like to go over a 13-day stretch from Friday with 3 games left in the season to a week from the following Thursday, what Bob did. On a Friday night with 3 games left in the season, he pitched a complete game and lost to Alvin Jackson of the Mets 1-0. Less than 48 hours later, he came back and pitched 4 2/3 innings on the final day of the season and won the game, was the winning pitcher. This is in less than 48 hours. 3 days later, on Wednesday, he started game 2, I beg your pardon, on Thursday, Bob, right?
Yeah.
On Thursday. That was game 2. Ray Sadecki started game 1. And Bob pitched 8 innings, struck out 12, and lost to the Yankees. 3 days later, on Monday, he pitches in game 5. He pitches 10 innings and wins 5-2. 2 days, and the final was on Thursday. The following Thursday, Bob had 2 days rest. He pitched a complete game and won. So over a 13-day period, he had 4 complete games and won the last game of the season with 4 2/3 innings. Now, when you look at the way pitching is...
I was one tired brother.
What'd Bob say?
I was one tired brother.
He was, too.
Well, as you guys said, and just wrapping this up, as you guys said, you can't talk about the 60s without talking about Bob Gibson, but so many other great names. Curt Flood, of course, we've heard already from the legendary Lou Brock, who we love so much, Red Schoendienst, Dal Maxfield, Julian Javier, Orlando Cepeda, all these great names. But among those great names, and I don't think you could talk about the 60s without talking about Tim McCarver and Mike Shannon as well. How about a round of applause for our three guys? Thank you.